Chapter 71. Yuan Shuo's Madness, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 71. Yuan Shuo's Madness, 1, in the basement. Li Hao felt that he had improved greatly after this absorption. However, Li Hao was still doubtful whether it had reached the level of 10 cuts, because Lu Long and the others were too vague. They might have thought that it was useless to tell Li Hao because he hadn't arrived yet. Even now, Li Hao still didn't know what characteristics of 10 cuts were. Did he just become stronger physically? At this moment, seeing that Lu Long was more talkative than before, this cold and arrogant captain wasn't as arrogant as before, probably because Li Hao's performance wasn't bad. Seeing this, Li Hao asked again, "Boss, is there no other way to judge the 10th level other than actual combat?" "There are." Lu Long nodded. "Lu Yen probably didn't bother to tell you before because you're just cannon fodder. You might die before you even reach the 10th realm. Other than being concerned about actual combat, you don't need to care about these things." Good fellow. Li Hao suddenly felt that he didn't regret his kick at all. It was a good kick. Lu Yen, this woman, was smiling on the surface, but she was certain that she wouldn't live long. As expected, women were all one-faced on the surface, but they were two-faced on the inside. Then what's the difference between the 10th realm? Lu Long thought for a while before saying, "First, let's talk about the premise. There's no need to differentiate realms from actual combat. Actual combat is the foundation. You must remember this." Li Hao nodded. This was understandable. If you look at actual combat, you can understand it literally. This requires you to practice it yourself. Whether it's breaking 100 or fighting 1,000, you'll naturally understand when you try the military camp. Envy. Li Hao laughed dryly. "I don't want to die. Besides, if you were to barge into the military camp, the other party would not fight you with bare hands. If they fired a cannon and 1,000 guns at the same time, even a warrior of the Qian dynasty would be killed. Even if you want to die, you shouldn't do it this way." Lu Long continued, "If we don't look at actual combat, just looking at the realm alone, there are also obvious characteristics. When one reached the 10th realm, they would be a martial master in the true sense. The so-called martial master's qi came from the inside. It's the internal strength that we, the common folk, teach. Or you can think of it that way. Before the appearance of superpowers, martial masters were also beyond the scope of ordinary people. Their most prominent characteristic was their vigorous inner qi. Internal strength." Li Hao's eyes lit up. "Right." Lu Long nodded. "It's actually a type of force. The convergence of inner force and the transformation of force into qi. To put it bluntly, when one reaches the martial master stage, one's qi and blood will be abundant, blood will surge, and the bones and muscles will ring together." After saying that, Lu Long suddenly shook his arm. At this moment it was as if the bones in his arms were ringing together. Pa pa pa. Like a long whip, the air exploded. Lu Long laughed, "See that? This was the most obvious characteristic of a martial master, which was also the 10th realm. The punches and kicks, the sound of the bones, and the filling of inner strength. This is the final result." Li Hao's eyes lit up. 10 cuts. This was the weakest martial master, the most basic martial master. His bones actually rang out with one punch. Amazing. He couldn't do it now. This also meant that he had yet to reach the 10th level. Even if he did not look at actual combat, he had not reached it in terms of realm. Then what about 100? Li Hao asked, becoming more and more interested. Lu Long furrowed his brows and said, "Over 100. You'd better not think about this. Martial masters have already declined. You'll have no chance of breaking through 10 realms. You'll enter the realm of superpowers directly. Once you break through 100. Letting out an imperceptible sigh, Lu Long calmly said, "Don't try to break 100. There are many martial masters in the 10th realm who have advanced to Starlight Master, but those who have broken through 100. I've almost never heard of them. Perhaps there were some in the past few years, but I'm afraid there's none now. Li Hao, remember, it's best not to absorb attribute-less mysterious energy in the future. To martial masters, attribute-less mysterious energy is a treasure, but it's also a disaster. If he absorbed too much, his constitution would become too strong, and his strength would become even stronger. Which would make the transformation even more difficult. If you really break 100, your chances of becoming a super will be very slim. It was somewhat self-deprecating. Once upon a time, a powerful martial master with over 100 points had become a burden. If they were weaker, they could still advance to super. The difficulty of breaking through 100 points increased sharply instead because it required too much mysterious energy. Even if there was enough mysterious energy, it might not be able to advance. 20 years ago, both he and Yuan Shua had been the leaders of the martial masters. But now, one was teaching archaeologists, while the other was a frontline law enforcer. His status seemed high, but in reality, it was not as high as a young man who had just entered the supernatural realm. Lu Long seemed to be in a daze. Li Hao tactfully stopped asking. According to Lu Long's explanation and some of the things his teacher had mentioned, Li Hao could understand that the stronger a martial master was, the lower the possibility of becoming a super. The attribute-less mysterious energy, on the other hand, was more used to increase a martial master's strength. If he wanted to become a superpower, he should absorb the mysterious energy. If you encountered a highly matched attribute mystic ability, you might directly become a super. Of course, the premise was that you were still alive. The mortality rate was not low, and there was still a 90% chance of survival in the Night Patrolman organization. In a demon hunting squad, it might only be 10%, so Lu Long didn't let Li Hao absorb the attribute mystic energy. Instead, he first improved Li Hao's physique. It's not good to aim too high. Li Hao secretly reminded himself that it was not a bad idea to reach the 10th realm first. Inner strength burst forth, and the bones and muscles rang in unison. This was the sign of cutting 10. As for actual combat, who cared about it? It was enough as long as he kept up with the foundation. Actual combat was actually very simple. One just had to fight more and kill more people. If others fought 100 battles in 10 years, one would be able to fight 100 battles in a year and keep up. This was not a problem. Chapter 72. Yuan Shua's Madness, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 72. Yuan Shua's Madness, 2, boss, that's all for today. I want to go to the Silver City's Ancient Academy later. Go to the Ancient Academy. Lu Long came back to his senses. He glanced at Li Hao, slightly frowned, and said in a deep voice, to find Yuan Shua. I'm here to see teacher. It's up to you, but there's one thing you need to know. You must leave tonight. Lu Long said after some consideration. Li Hao was puzzled. Seeing this, Lu Long explained, we need more clues and the whereabouts of the person behind this. If you stay in the Silver City Ancient Academy, the other party may not appear again. As for the Ancient Academy, because Yuan Shua is about to go out for an inspection, there might be night patrols coming over in advance. Of course, if you're afraid of death, you can stay there and not come out. I want revenge more. Li Hao shook his head. Boss, if we really can't solve it, do we need to inform the night patrol? Lu Long's face was cold. Remember one thing, if even a demon hunter squad can't deal with it, then an ordinary night patrolman is also courting death. Don't think too highly of the night patrolman. As a martial master with a score of over 100, there aren't many night patrolmen who can defeat me. Most of them have important missions and are in charge of the famous cities. Do you think that the night patrolman in this small silver city can solve the problem that I can? Self-confidence and pride. The pride of a martial master with over 100 points. Even though he was a superhuman, Lu Long still had his own pride. This time, Li Hao didn't say anything. He also believed that Lu Long wouldn't really be unaware of the danger and still insist on doing so. It wasn't entirely because he had killed the other party and had obtained the mysterious energy. There was a greater possibility that he had said it himself. He couldn't deal with it, and the weak night patrolman couldn't either. The higher-ups of the Nightwalker wouldn't necessarily come to Blizzard Silver City to take charge just because something didn't happen. Li Hao was relieved after thinking this through. Moreover, he had discovered Wang Ming. Li Hao had to expose this guy before the rainy day arrived. A superhuman hiding in the dark might cause some trouble. He left the basement. Li Hao walked out of the law enforcement building. Just as he was about to leave the inspector's office, his eyes flickered. What a coincidence! Brother Hao. In front of him, Wang Ming's smile was as bright as the sun. Brother Hao, let's go eat together. I've just arrived, so I don't know if there's anything good to eat in the inspection office cafeteria. It was already noon. It wasn't too strange to meet him here. But Li Hao knew that this guy had definitely run into him on purpose. Li Hao smiled, pure and kind. I'm sorry, little Ming. I have to go to the Silver City Ancient Academy now. A case. Little Ming's address made Wang Ming raise his eyebrows slightly for a moment, but he quickly calmed down and showed an interested expression, as if he really wanted to get involved. No, I'm going to see my teacher. Li Hao shook his head. Brother Hao is a student of the Silver City's Ancient Academy. It used to be. Li Hao smiled and then said apologetically, I have to go now. Little Ming, you can eat by yourself first. If you can, let Sister Na take you. We'll have dinner together tonight. All right then. Wang Ming didn't pester him. Li Hao also stepped out. He took his bicycle from the roadside, got on it, and rode toward the Silver City Ancient Academy. As Wang Ming watched his back disappear, a faint, strange light appeared in his eyes. Lu Long was willing to spend a lot of money. The Silver Blizzard City's demon hunting squad shouldn't have much mysterious energy in reserve, yet even Li Hao had absorbed it. Was he really going to absorb Li Hao? It's a bit of a waste. The next self-immolation case might come very soon. The mysterious energy that Li Hao was absorbing right now really wasn't of much use. Even if he could quickly reach the 10th realm, it wouldn't be of much use. Why waste the mysterious energy? Lu Long from Silver City. Wang Ming cast a glance at the law enforcement building not far away. This person actually had some reputation even in White Moon City. What a pity. The stronger one's martial arts were, the harder it was to cross that step and break the superpower lock. Martial arts, strengthen the superpower lock. He thought of the reminder from his elders that ordinary people were very weak at the beginning when they became supers. Breaking through 100 martial masters was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. According to the exploration of the supernatural realm, it was best to advance to a supernatural at the 10th severing realm. This was the best result. It was not too difficult to break the super lock and the starting point was still high. Therefore, many supernatural organizations would prioritize the promotion of martial masters at the 10th severing realm. On the contrary, no one wanted those that exceeded 100. At the thought of Lu Long, Wang Ming was a little apprehensive. He didn't continue looking in that direction, but once again looked in the direction where Li Hao had disappeared. Li Hao, teacher Yuan Shuo. Yuan Shuo. He sighed with emotion. This person was much more famous than Lu Long. As martial masters, Yuan Shuo had broken through the 100-point threshold 20 years ago. In other words, he was one of the top martial artists even before the appearance of superpowers. As for Lu Long, he had actually used some of the mysterious energy to break through 100. He was not on the same level as the one who had broken through 100 by relying on his ordinary abilities. Moreover, that person was a well-known ancient civilization expert in the entire Silvermoon province, and his reputation was even more fearsome. 5 birds technique, breathing technique. It said that there might be an even stronger version of the breathing technique. Unfortunately, that person has a strange temper and is difficult for ordinary people to approach. I wonder how Li Hao became his student. Yuan Shua had taken in many disciples. However, in recent years, Yuan Shua had only one student, Li Hao. His previous students had either graduated or died. Yuan Shua was already in his 70s, and he hadn't had any students in years. It was actually quite strange that he had accepted Li Hao. Chapter 73. Yuan Shua's Madness, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 73. Yuan Shua's Madness, 3. Envy. Li Hao ignored Wang Ming's doubts. Silver City Ancient Academy. It was a familiar place. Silence and peace were the norm in the Ancient Academy. The Ancient Academy's most famous faculty was the Ancient Civilization Exploration Faculty, which was also the major faculty under Yuan Shua's control. It was precisely because of Yuan Shua that the Silver City Ancient Academy had its current fame. In the entire province, the graduates of the Ancient Academy were pursued by many forces. Yuan Shua was good at too many things. Even if he no longer took in disciples, the exploration students he brought out were still very famous. They were active in major cities and explored various archaeological ruins. The ancient civilization was also a field that the entire human race was exploring. According to some ancient records, there was an extremely glorious ancient civilization before the current one. However, it eventually shattered and completely disappeared in the long river of history. There were very few records left. And now, the exploration of the ancient civilization had also allowed many things to develop beyond their limits. Communication, travel, firearms, and even superpowers were all related to the excavation of ancient civilizations. It was said that many of these key technologies were directly obtained from the ruins of an ancient civilization, which allowed human society, which was still an agricultural society a few decades ago, to quickly enter an industrial civilization. Of course, because too many things had been discovered, some technologies had been put aside, causing some things to develop in an unbalanced way. The development of firearms and explosives was quite powerful, but the development of information technology was relatively backward. Nowadays, it was difficult to contact people from other cities even if they were out of Silver City. According to Yuan Shua, during the ancient civilization era, it was easy to contact people from thousands of miles away. The communication system covered the entire continent. Now, communication devices were only used in the same city, which was also a sign of social imbalance. Li Hao rode his bike forward, and no one stopped him. Even though he wasn't a student of the Ancient Academy, he was still able to pass through without any obstructions in his inspector uniform. After a while, they passed through a tree-lined path and a few small courtyards appeared in front of them. This was the residence of some of the senior professors of the Ancient Academy, and people rarely came here. Just as Li Hao rode his bike over, a person suddenly jumped out of the bushes and blocked Li Hao's path. He coldly said, "The Ancient Academy is an important place, unauthorized people are not allowed to enter. I'm looking for Teacher Yuan." Li Hao raised his head, looked at the other party, and said with a smile, "New. I'm teacher's student, Li Hao, a third-level patrol inspector from the patrol division. I've been here before, but it was Big Brother Zhang who was on duty. Are you from the patrol division or the Ancient Academy's security team? Elder Yuan won't be receiving guests for the time being." The man who appeared didn't care what Li Hao said and said in a deep voice, "Elder Yuan will need to cultivate in seclusion for a while." Teacher said that. Li Hao raised his eyebrows. "Then I'll make a call. I won't make things difficult for you, but..." He smiled. "I think this is the decision of the guards or other organizations. Master doesn't have the habit of meditating. Don't make decisions for him, even if you are a superpower organization. The man's expression changed slightly. He looked at Li Hao with a cold expression. I'm just casually saying. In the past, Li Hao had always been wary of night patrollers, but now, he didn't care. What's wrong with TT? If the night patrolmen really paid attention to him joining the demon hunting team, they would definitely know. Since that's the case, it's only natural that I know about the Nightwalker organization. The man in front of him had a faint mysterious energy. Of course, it was not strong, not even as strong as Lu Long's, strictly speaking, it was not even as strong as Lu Yan's. However, Li Hao guessed that he was probably sent by the night patrolman to protect his teacher. The real superhuman might not be here, or he might be in the dark. Anyway, this guy was not a real superhuman. There was a high chance that he was a martial master who had absorbed the mysterious energy and was in existence like Lu Long and the others. In front of him, the middle-aged man frowned slightly and said in a deep voice, "Wait a moment, I'll report this." Li Hao didn't say anything else. There was no need to provoke the night patrolman. It was just that the other party was refusing guests. This was definitely not the teacher's idea. This was why he was a little unhappy. Did the night patrolman even have to restrict the reception of guests? The man disappeared for a while. A moment later, he reappeared and said in a deep voice, "Go in." "Thanks." Li Hao chuckled and continued riding his bike. The man looked at his back and frowned slightly. He adjusted the black earplugs in his ears and said in a low voice, "I didn't check. Will there be any problems?" "It's fine, let him in." "Understood." The man didn't say anything else, but he was a little surprised. The others had been rejected before, but the higher-ups didn't stop this young man. Yuan Shuo would soon be participating in the next archaeological ruin exploration. It was said that this time was quite important. In order to prevent the specific information from being leaked and to ensure Yuan Shuo's safety, Yuan Shuo had indeed not seen any more guests recently. In the Yuan family's courtyard, Li Hao parked his bicycle at the entrance and knocked on the door. "Open it yourself." The old man's voice came from the small courtyard. In the courtyard that was covered with green bricks, Yuan Shuo was practicing his martial arts. He did not have the ferocity of the tiger fighting technique, but rather, he was doing it slowly, like a turtle basking in the sun, giving off a lazy feeling. Li Hao pushed the door open. With a creak, the wooden door opened. The moment he saw his teacher, Li Hao smiled. "Teacher. Find a place to stay." Yuan Shuo continued punching without greeting Li Hao. Yuan Shuo, who was in his 70s, was still very strong. He was not too tall, about 1.7 meters. However, he was not short for an old man. He must have been taller when he was younger. Chapter 74. Yuan Shuo's Madness, 4, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 74. Yuan Shuo's Madness, 4, his hair was also a little white, and he was wearing a pair of cloth shoes, which made him look very simple. Li Hao was used to this. He sat down on a chair and watched his teacher practice. It was really slow. Each of his punches was like a snail crawling, causing one to feel like dozing off. However, Yuan Shuo was not tired of it at all. He had been practicing this turtle fist for many years. Li Hao had seen it a long time ago and thought that his teacher was going to add another technique to the 5 birds technique, the turtle technique. Yuan Shuo didn't look at Li Hao, but he could sense that Li Hao was looking at him. He could even guess what Li Hao was thinking. In the next moment, just as Li Hao was about to take a sip of water from his teacup, Yuan Shuo, who had been moving slowly just a moment ago, suddenly disappeared. When he reappeared, a fist had already appeared in front of Li Hao. Very, very slow. As if in slow motion, Li Hao tried to dodge, but he felt that he had been locked on and couldn't move at all. Li Hao's forehead was instantly covered in sweat. At this moment, he felt as if he was being stared at by a red shadow. That feeling of fear and danger, a life and death crisis. Roar. The tigers roar in the forest. Sound wave attack. Bang. Bang. A heavy slap landed on his head, and Yuan Shuo retracted his fist. Li Hao didn't even see him do so. What are you screaming for? Yuan Shuo was a little displeased and scolded, a tiger roaring in the forest, you're meowing like a cat. You didn't learn the tiger fighting technique, you learned the cat fighting technique. Li Hao was a little embarrassed. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and stood up. Teacher, you were too fast just now, and I feel like I can't move. That's because you're too weak. Yuan Shuo's face was full of dissatisfaction. Third-rated martial masters rely on their fists and feet, second-rated martial masters rely on their aura, and first-rated martial masters lock their spirit. You're not even third-rate. Li Hao rubbed his head but didn't care. He wasn't a third-rate martial master to begin with. The third-rate mentioned by his teacher was still a martial master. He wasn't even a martial master. The 10th realm. Yuan Shuo only cursed. He was used to cursing. After he finished, he nodded and said, it's all right. It's better than before. In the past, you couldn't even shout it out. At least you've improved. But it's not what I want to see. He then shook his head and said, martial arts have declined. It's good to keep fit. It was better to make ancient civilization exploration his main business. At least he wouldn't have to worry about food and drink in the future. I was thinking that you're quite talented. If you were an ordinary person and focused on archaeology, you'd at least have a place. After I retire, I'd arrange for you to be an assistant teacher or something. You could take over my position in a few decades. What a pity. Li Hao smiled in embarrassment. Without saying anything else, he poured a cup of tea for his teacher before turning to Yuan Shuo with a perplexed look. Whether it was Lu Long or Lu Yen, all of them had some starlight on them, even if it wasn't pure. And a starlight master like Wang Ming also had starlight, which was very pure. But teacher really didn't tea. Otherwise, he would have discovered it long ago. Has teacher never absorbed the mysterious energy before? What are you looking at? Yuan Shuo sat down and kicked Li Hao away. He took the teacup and started drinking. Teacher, why are you different from Captain Lu? Li Hao thought for a moment and said, I feel a little cold when I'm close to Captain Lu. It's just that the mystery can be leaked. Yuan Shuo, on the other hand, had an indifferent expression as he casually said, he's trash, he's trash. He absorbed too much mysterious energy, too much of it, and didn't completely digest it. Of course, some of it will leak out and create a cold feeling for you. I'm not that trash. Li Hao was completely speechless. He knew that his teacher was very arrogant. However, this was the first time he had seen his teacher so arrogant. He was a martial master with a cultivation of over 100, and he was also the boss of the law enforcement team. Was it appropriate to scold him like this? However, he was also a little surprised. Did his teacher mean that he had absorbed and completely digested the mysterious energy? Yuan Shuo continued, don't look at it anymore. You won't be able to see anything anyway. Learn and use what I taught you before. No matter how bad you are, you will still be better off than Lu Long. Do you understand? Li Hao understood. The breathing technique of 5 birds. In that case, the breathing technique was really powerful and could completely absorb the mysterious energy. Li Hao didn't feel much about it, but he had a vague feeling that this secret skill might really be powerful. Of course, this was not his purpose for coming here. He was here for the starlight energy of the Jade Sword. He yearned for his teacher to become a super, so that he would have more confidence to face the crisis. Chapter 75. Martial Master Doqian, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 75. Chapter 22. Martial Master Doqian, 1, in the small courtyard. Li Hao's face was full of expectation. Teacher, are you injured? He he. Yuan Shuo laughed wildly. Are you kidding me? Hurt me. Before I become a superpower, I will sweep the world. After becoming a superpower, I'm the guest of honor of the Night Patrolmen. Even though the Night Patrolmen don't consist of all supers, they are still the largest organization in the supernatural realm. Tell me, who can hurt me? This wasn't the answer Li Hao wanted. He could not help but ask, Teacher, what Captain Lu means is that every martial master who exceeds 100 has hidden injuries. You were a top-tier martial master back then. Was it because you had too many hidden injuries that you were unable to advance to become a super? That's him, he's trash. Why are you so stubborn? Li Hao was mentally exhausted. Although his teacher was good, he was too stubborn. He refused to admit that he had internal injuries, which made him feel helpless. Then, Li Hao could only be more direct. Teacher, you still can't become a superhuman. There must be a reason for you to become a Starlight Master, right? I'm too strong. Yuan Shuo felt that this student of his was looking down on him. What did that mean? You want to poke my wound? He he. That was impossible. Of course, it was also because he felt that telling Li Hao wouldn't be of much use. Since that was the case, he didn't have to say anything. So what if the kid knew? Li Hao was really anxious now. His teacher was too stubborn. Teacher, if you recover from your internal injuries, will you have a chance to advance to a Starlight Master? You're looking for me just for this. Yes. I'm so bored. Yuan Shuo was also speechless. Are you too free? He had to say, don't think too much. There are many reasons why I can't advance. External and internal, both. Teacher, can you be more specific? Yuan Shuo frowned and stared at him for a while. After a while, he slowly said, I have the breathing technique of 5 birds and the Night Patrolman has also provided me with some mysterious energy. I have also absorbed some. However, because I was too strong in the past, I needed too much mysterious energy. This is the first reason, Li Hao nodded. He lacked mysterious energy. I'm old and my body functions are declining. This is the second reason. Li Hao nodded again. His physique was not strong enough to withstand the impact of breaking through to 100+ martial master. I've made some strong enemies in the past. Some of them have already become supers, and some of them are even leaders of some superpower organizations. They've once pressured the Night Watchers. This is the third reason. As for the fourth. Yuan Shuo suddenly laughed. He glanced at Li Hao and lazily said, I don't want to advance. He was dumbfounded. What did that mean? The first 3 were easy, but what did the fourth mean? He didn't want to advance. Could it be that the first 3 conditions were all nonsense and that the teacher could advance? Seeing that his student was at a loss, Yuan Shuo smiled again. It was quite interesting to tease Li Hao. Seeing Li Hao's frowning face, Yuan Shuo stopped teasing him. He smiled and said regretfully, the first 3 are true, and the fourth is also true. Actually, a few years ago, I still had the chance to become a super, but I was not willing to give up. At this moment, Yuan Shuo shook his head and laughed at himself with an indescribable feeling. At that time, the development of supers had been going on for more than a decade. Some of my old friends had been in the field for more than a decade and had a long way to go. If I broke through 100 and advanced, I would probably be greeted by my old friends when I entered the superpower realm. It's fine if I'm not a superhuman. Once I'm a superhuman, even the Night Patrolman would find it hard to protect me. I'm a martial master now, not a Starlight Master. The other party would not dare to attack me rashly. They don't even see me as a great enemy. Li Hao vaguely understood. Even if he didn't become a superpower, he still had some concerns. But wasn't this like drinking poison to quench thirst? Obviously, Yuan Shuo was not a timid person. He laughed again and said, "A few years ago, I actually still had some great ambitions. At that time, I thought that I wanted to advance in martial arts first. I'm going to step into the 1,000 warrior domain and become a super. Even if I haven't become a super for more than 10 years, once I become a star light master, I won't be afraid of any strong enemies." At this moment, Yuan Shuo suddenly felt a little wild. The feeling he gave Li Hao was that he was even more arrogant and despotic than Lu Long. He wanted to become a super with the identity of a warrior master and become a top star light master. He wanted to close the gap between him and his old friends. However, it was obvious that he had failed. Li Hao frowned. "Teacher, you mean that you didn't advance a few years ago because you felt that you wouldn't be able to defeat the enemy even if you did? You could only wait for a martial master to reach the Qian Dolua stage and then directly catch up. Not bad. Then, is there a problem?" Li Hao didn't know how strong a warrior of the 1,000 fighting level was, but he knew that his teacher had broken through the 100 point threshold many years ago. Since he still had the intention to do so a few years ago, it meant that he still had a chance to succeed. Why did he give up now? Yes, he had given up. If he hadn't given up, Li Hao felt that his teacher wouldn't have said such things now, or said things like ambition a few years ago. Yuan Shuo laughed. "Yes, there's a problem. That's good. I'll give up now. I wanted the night patrolman to help me think of a way, but I haven't been successful. There's no other way, so I can only accept my fate. It's actually a good thing." Chapter 76. Martial Master Doqian, 2, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 76. Chapter 22 Martial Master Doqian, 2, if not for that, I wouldn't even have the mood to take in students. Yuan Shuo chuckled. In the past, he had been busy with advancing to the 1,000 warrior tier. That was why he had not taken in any students for many years. However, ever since Do Qian's hopes were dashed, he did not have much desire to become a superhuman. He asked the night patrolman to think of a way to get him some good things to nourish his body, but the night patrolman kept rejecting him. He had completely given up. Now, he could only spend his remaining years in peace and obediently stay in the Silver City's ancient academy. Of course, it was precisely because he was too free that he had the time to take in students. The outsiders were puzzled as to why he had accepted another student. It was actually very simple. He was too free. Since he couldn't improve his martial master cultivation and become a superpower master, it was a good time to teach students. He chose Li Hao because he wasn't stupid. At least he could learn some of his knowledge. If he didn't choose Li Hao, was he supposed to choose Zhang Yuan? Stupid. Teacher, do you still have a chance to advance to the warrior of the universe and become a super? I know what you're thinking, and I also know that you're in danger. But with my half-crippled strength of over 100, I'm afraid I'm not as good as Lu Long. Yuan Shuo sighed. He was helpless. Yuan Shuo, the Five Birds Grandmaster who had once dominated a region, could only resign himself to his fate and say that he was inferior to Lu Long. If you're afraid, come to my place and hide. The other party won't dare to come to my place easily. After all, I'm still useful to the night patrolman and you still have to rely on me for archaeology. Li Hao scratched his ears and cheeks. This was why he showed the anxiety of a young man. Teacher, He didn't know what to say. After thinking for a while, he suddenly stood up and walked into the house. Teacher, I got something good. Try it and see if it's of any use to you. Good stuff. Yuan Shuo almost laughed out loud. Little guy, it's so fun. What good stuff. How good was it? Yuan Shuo, have seen far too many treasures in my life, so many that I can't even remember how many I have. His own problem was not that simple. That would hurt his foundation. In fact, it had only been a few years. Just over 3 years ago, he was also exploring an archaeological ruin. In the end, he was unlucky and ran too slowly. Not only did many night patrols die, but he, a martial grandmaster who was about to fight against the universe, also lost his hope of advancing. Otherwise, he would have already secretly become a super and even gone to chat with his old friends. Li Hao entered the house, but he didn't pay much attention to him. He recalled the scene back then and gently touched the place where his heart was. He had been seriously injured that time, and his heart had been pierced through. If it wasn't for his extremely strong vitality, he really wouldn't have been able to come back. However, he was old, after all. He was over 70 years old, and he had been seriously injured. He had survived, but there was no hope for him to become a martial master. Maybe. I need to find a chance to become a super. Maybe I can still remedy this. He thought to himself. In fact, even though he seemed to have given up, he had not really given up. He still wanted to become a super. However, it was difficult to level up with his broken body. It was much more difficult than a few years ago. Li Hao saw that he was practicing the turtle fist. It really was the turtle fist. The longevity of the divine turtle was the most important thing about health. This was the Yangshan fist that he had restored through various ancient books. It wasn't to increase his combat power, but to recuperate. He wanted to try again to become a super or a warrior of the thousand world. In short, he definitely had to try. Even if he died, he had to charge once, or else he would not be willing. There was no need to tell this to the outside world. Now, the night patrolmen felt that they had given up and were not too willing to provide any precious treasures to help them recover. If I can succeed. Just wait and see. 20 years ago, he dominated a region. Now, many of the superpowers overlords were his younger brothers. Now, each and every one of them was riding on top of his head. If he didn't teach them a lesson, it would really be difficult to calm down. He had been hiding in the Silver City for so many years and had to rely on the night patrolmen to survive. How aggrieved. It was rare for Yuan Shua to be a little distracted. Reminiscing the past, reminiscing the glory of the past. As for Li Hao, he didn't care what the kid did. He was familiar with this place anyway. Yuan Shua leaned back in his chair, thinking about all these random things. Soon, Li Hao came out. He was holding a glass of water. Yuan Shua laughed. There's water here. What's the point of going in to pour water? Teacher, please have a taste. Yuan Shua was slightly taken aback. He turned his head to look at Li Hao, then at the water in the cup. He said hesitantly, you poisoned it. Poison me to death and inherit my inheritance. I've written my will, and the inheritance will go to the night patrolman. If you take it, you'll lose your life. Bedo Dem Li Hao was speechless, but he didn't mind. Sometimes, teachers just liked to talk nonsense. Teacher, have a taste. Yuan Shua looked at the cup and stroked his short beard. He seemed to have understood something and laughed, mysterious energy. It can even enter the water. But it was really useless. Also, my current body is actually a little uncomfortable absorbing the mysterious energy. He had guessed a little. Forget it, I'll drink it for the sake of my students' filial piety. In fact, his injuries hadn't healed yet, and his body was very weak. It would be a little troublesome if he were to charge at the mysterious energy. However, Yuan Shua was a martial master with a cultivation of over 100 martial masters. How much mysterious energy did this cup of water have? 0.1, not even Fong. It's not a big deal that it's full of mysterious energy. I'll just drink it and let this kid give up. Soaking in sword water. In fact, he had already guessed the origin of this thing. It was a little strange. He glanced at Li Hao. With the sword on Li Hao's body, soaking it in sword water was not much different from Li Hao's bathwater. Chapter 77. Martial Master Doqian, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 77. Chapter 22 Martial Master Doqian, 3, AI. I'm really a good teacher. In order not to hurt my student's heart, I even drank his bath water. It was not like Yuan Shua had never absorbed the mysterious energy from an extraordinary item before. It was useless. With a myriad of thoughts in his mind, Yuan Shua took the cup and drank it all in one gulp. Before he swallowed it, he began to shout, "Good. The effect is not bad. Li Hao, you're still filial." Li Hao's face turned green. "Teacher, you haven't drunk it yet. Was there a need?" Yuan Shua laughed and praised her exaggeratedly. The water had already entered his stomach, and he wanted to tease her a little more, but he suddenly stopped. Within his body, a mysterious energy spread. There was no impact. Gentle. A warm current. It was extremely gentle. He had never experienced such a gentle mysterious energy. The mysterious energy he came into contact with, no matter what it was all extremely overbearing and had a strong impact. He was stunned for a moment. "Teacher, use the breathing technique." Li Hao reminded him. Yes, the breathing technique. In order to not let the mysterious energy impact him, Yuan Shua did not even use his breathing technique. He was afraid that the impact would be too strong and cause him to vomit blood. However, at this moment, he quickly used the breathing technique of 5 birds and was even prepared to vomit blood from the impact. But Yuan Shua's mouth was agape, and his eyes were wide open. What was going on? The mysterious energy was quickly absorbed by him, but it was still the same as before. The warm current was like a hot spring, slowly flowing through the bottom of his heart, comfortable. Absorbing mysterious energy had always been a synonym for pain. However, he actually felt comfortable. It was a kind of comfort that was warm to the bone. Ah! Yuan Shua could not help but groan softly. The corner of Li Hao's mouth twitched. Calling him teacher was a little hard to say. This was just how old Cat called spring. In the next moment, Yuan Shua stood up abruptly. His eyes were filled with shock and horror. This was not a mysterious energy. He stared at Li Hao unblinkingly. This was definitely not a mysterious energy. He, Yuan Shua, had seen all kinds of mysterious energy, but not this kind. Even medical-type mysterious energy was painful when it entered the body. It was just that the mysterious medical ability would forcefully heal some injuries after the pain. However, this was completely different. Yuan Shua didn't say a word as he experienced it in silence. He was much stronger than Li Hao, and he had seen much more. He sensed and analyzed. Heal. Nourish. Nourish. Nourish the body. And the spirit. The shock in Yuan Shua's eyes could be seen with the naked eye. He could even feel that his heart, which had always been broken, and the wounds on it, were slowly healing. But it was too little. He was too strong. This cup of water was too little. It was so little that the wound on his heart, which was about 5 centimeters long, had not even healed by half a centimeter. Even 10 times the warmth was not enough. Furthermore, it would be harder to heal in the later stages. But this was really too precious. What was this? Yuan Shua was powerful, and his 5 birds breathing technique was also powerful. He absorbed all the warm current in an instant, and there was no leakage at all. It was not even enough for him to absorb, so how could there be any leakage? Moreover, starlight energy was easier to absorb than mysterious energy. No more. At this moment, Yuan Shua was a little dissatisfied and eager. The next moment, he suddenly realized something and sighed. There was some unspeakable regret on his face, but he still revealed a smile. It's all right, but this thing. You can keep it for your own use. Your sword is not simple. However, this mysterious energy should be very little. Don't waste it, use it sparingly. Teacher, is it effective? Li Hao, on the other hand, was full of anticipation and didn't pay attention to what the teacher said. Average. Just like that. Yuan Shuo laughed. He knew about extraordinary items. There wouldn't be too many mysterious energy stored on them. He was old. Even if he absorbed all of it, it might not have any effect. I'll leave it to this kid. It would be a waste to give it to him. At this moment, Yuan Shuo's mind was filled with many thoughts. There was even a moment where he felt a little impulsive. If it was in the past, he might have come directly. But now, forget it. As he grew older, his heart softened. In addition, he knew that this kind of energy was not much, so his impulse was quickly extinguished. Yuan Shuo, oh Yuan Shuo, don't ruin your image as a kind teacher in the eyes of the students. Ordinary. Li Hao was a little disappointed. It didn't work. It can't be. Of course, it could be that the teacher was too strong, so the cup of water was too little. At this thought, Li Hao was unwilling to give up. He hurriedly said, Teacher, a few more times. Forget it. Yuan Shuo interrupted him. Li Hao was still unwilling to give up. Teacher, you must have drunk too little. You're too strong, so there's no effect. I'm just trying this cup of water. If I have more, it should have some effect. One of my dogs drank a cup the day before yesterday, and his fur became much brighter. Li Hao impatiently said, Teacher, if drinking water doesn't work, then try directly absorbing it. I've absorbed it last night, about 10 times the amount of a cup of water. It's still useful. Yuan Shuo was speechless. He just looked at Li Hao in silence. A dog had drunk a lot. Li Hao had absorbed 10 times the amount last night. What the hell? At this moment, Yuan Shuo was a little confused. Li Hao's small jade sword was so small, so he could guess how much mystery it contained with his eyes closed. But what was Li Hao talking about? Could the Li family's sword really be extraordinary? At this moment, Yuan Shuo could no longer maintain his image as an expert. He coughed and suppressed his voice to a low tone, You. Little Hao, you're saying that you still have a lot of this energy. Chapter 78. Martial Master Doqian, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 78. Chapter 22 Martial Master Doqian, 1, I don't know. Li Hao shook his head, but I absorbed some last night. I can feel that the mysterious energy flowing out hasn't decreased at all. I think there should be quite a bit. Perhaps teacher has absorbed all of them. It might be of some use. It doesn't seem to be decreasing. Yuan Shuo stroked his beard and looked at Li Hao. You were just casually soaking in the water. Yup. Yuan Shuo broke a strand of his beard and blew it away. When he looked at Li Hao again, his expression changed. Really? How was that possible? You. Why don't you? Why don't you let me try sucking it? Yuan Shuo couldn't help but feel tempted. He had thought of saving it for Li Hao, but when he thought of how this bastard had fed it to a dog and squandered it, he felt that he should. Should he try sucking some more? Seeing that his teacher had agreed, Li Hao heaved a sigh of relief. He hurriedly took out his jade sword and handed it to his teacher. Yuan Shuo received the jade sword and frowned slightly. He didn't sense any extraordinary aura. Self-protection or a state of deep sleep. Or did he need Li Hao to activate it? The weapons in the song seemed to be extraordinary. They were different from the transcendent items he had seen before. Can it be sucked out? Yuan Shuo thought for a moment and gently circulated the breathing technique. The next moment, a warm current surged out. Ah! Yuan Shua let out a groan. He suddenly felt so comfortable that it seeped right into his bones. It was even more comfortable than when he was young and had been looking for women. So many. What a rich special mysterious energy. It could really be sucked out. At this moment, Yuan Shua's mind was wandering, and he felt like he was floating. He was a little drunk. The powerful mysterious energy gushed out and flowed into his body. At this moment, his heart started to absorb the mysterious energy like crazy. In his body, not only his heart, but also the cracks in the depths of his blood vessels were also rapidly absorbing this mysterious energy. Some of the wounds on his bones were also absorbing it. His entire body was absorbing this mysterious energy. His body seemed to be extremely eager to obtain these. This was because he was once a super martial master who was about to fight 1,000 men. He was a grandmaster-like figure. This also meant that he had left behind many hidden injuries. Floating like an immortal. At this moment, Yuan Shua forgot that he wanted to leave some for Li Hao. He yearned for this mysterious energy too much. This was an immortal pill. A little more, I'll just take a little more. Such a thought appeared in his heart. A moment later, Yuan Shua, with his transcendent grandmaster mentality, was suddenly jolted awake. To be able to regain his calm in such a state, Yuan Shua's state of mind was simply extraordinary. He held the jade sword in one hand and clenched his other hand into a fist, trying to calm the shock in his heart. He looked at Li Hao, his expression completely changing. He suddenly said coldly, "You'll be in more trouble than you can imagine." Li Hao was confused. "Weren't you absorbing the mysterious energy? Why are you suddenly saying this? Is teacher going to rob me?" He wanted to say, "I still have a knife, and the jade sword is passed down from my ancestors. Teacher, why don't you try another one? This thing. It surpasses all the extraordinary items I've ever seen. The person who has his eyes on this thing might know how precious this sword is. If he knows, you'll be in trouble beyond imagination. The other party must also be determined to obtain it, and the key is. This sword might not have been unsealed." Yes, it was not unsealed. Even with Yuan Shua's knowledge, he was slightly shocked. This sword was most likely still sealed. The mysterious energy that he had absorbed might only be a portion of the mysterious energy stored in the sword. It was not the most precious. The truly precious thing was still the sword. Just like that, Yuan Shua almost couldn't hold it in anymore. One could only imagine how many people would look at this sword once it was unsealed. The 8 great families of Silver City. Yuan Shua murmured. In his mind, even if there were 8 great families in the small Silver City, so what? The world was big, but Silver City was pitifully small. How powerful could the 8 great families here be? But at this moment, he suddenly had some doubts. Could it be related to the ancient civilization? A sword that had not been unsealed. At this moment, he felt that the injury in his heart had actually recovered by 30%. It was simply incredible. Didn't this mean that his heart would recover after absorbing it 3 to 5 more times? Then, he would absorb it 1 or 2 more times, and all his internal injuries would disappear. If I absorb it 1 or 2 more times, will I be able to recover to the peak of my youth and try to break through to the universe master level? Don't mess around. I've already given up. Can I still try for the Qian warrior class? Then. If I try to become a super after I become a warrior, I will have a better chance than a few years ago. She swallowed her saliva and couldn't help but think. His heart also started to beat. Have you told the others? He suddenly asked while looking at Li Hao. Li Hao felt a little sad. Why did he sound like this? Was his teacher really going to rob him? Teacher. Calm down, calm down. I didn't tell anyone else, only I knew. Oh, And a dog. That's good. Yes. Yuan Shua nodded, but in the next moment, he suddenly felt that something was amiss. I also know that. Li Hao said that he knew and that he had a dog. But why did it sound like he was scolding someone? Don't tell anyone else. And. You idiot, you shouldn't even tell me about this. Yuan Shua warned. Li Hao was embarrassed. How can that be? Teacher, new book of 5 birds and breathing technique of 5 birds are such precious things, and you gave them to me just like that. Also, you've been taking care of me all these years, so even if I don't tell my father, I have to tell you. Chapter 79. Martial Master Doqian, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 79. Chapter 22 Martial Master Doqian, 1, Hee. Yuan Shua sneered. Your father is buried in the ground. Do you want me to be buried too? I didn't mean that. Alright, I understand your intentions. After Yuan Shua finished speaking, he looked at the jade sword in his hand and casually threw it to Li Hao. After a moment of silence, he said, I think that this mysterious ability is still limited. You can't squander it. Raising and feeding dogs, you really don't want to be human. How do you feel, teacher? It's alright. Then, teacher, absorb more. No need. Li Hao was also a smart person. He had seen his teacher's shock just now. At this moment, Li Hao said in a deep voice, Teacher, I'm in great danger this time. Although the mysterious energy is good, I'm afraid I won't be able to use it. If teacher can really advance to the warrior Qian level or become a starlight master, at least I'll still be alive. You'll hide here for a year. Yuan Shua's eyes were a little bright. If you can absorb this mysterious energy for a while more and build a good foundation, I can guarantee that you'll break 100. At the very least, you'll be promoted to a Starlight Master with the status of over 100 Martial Masters. This way, in a year's time, you'll be a super, and you won't be a weakling even among the Night Watchers. Teacher, are you sure it's useful to hide here? If the other party can't get this thing, what if word gets out and it attracts other people or the night patrolmen to covet it? At this moment, Li Hao's face was also ruthless. Teacher, even you say that it's precious. If you think that it's a treasure even with your many years of archaeology knowledge, what about the others? Now, the best way is to kill them. Li Hao bared his fangs and brandished his claws, trying to boost his momentum. Many people might know about the Sun songs of the 8 great families of the Silver Blizzard City, but they don't know the specific situation. However, the guy who killed Zhang Yuan might know the specific situation. After all, in the eyes of others, the Silver City is just a small place. Extraordinary items are not worth mentioning. At least, they won't attract the attention of the big shots. And I don't have that ability. If teacher can advance and kill that person, it would be a form of protection for me. Could it be that teacher is not confident in advancing or not confident in killing that person? Yuan Shua looked at this student in a daze. After a long while, he said in a daze, You brat, when did you become so ruthless? You're going to kill me just like that. I didn't teach him that. What I've taught this kid is to cultivate his body and mind and study hard. I've never taught him to kill. Li Hao laughed like a little fox. Teacher, I've been working in the inspection office for a year. What case haven't I seen? I've read so many that I'm used to it. At this moment, Yuan Shua felt that the inspector was misleading the disciples. Li Hao had turned bad. I feel a little heartbroken. The person I'm nurturing, the person I want to nurture, is actually a good person. Teacher, if you can absorb it, then absorb it. You're so good, but you only absorbed this little. It doesn't feel like as much as I did last night. Yuan Shua was still a little embarrassed, while Li Hao looked like he expected better from him. He said bitterly, Teacher, it's better to give it to the teacher than to let an outsider have it. His teacher would just say it directly, would he be able to advance if he absorbed it? If not, I can try it out with Captain Lu. He has advanced, so he might be very powerful. Stop your nonsense. What capabilities does Lu Long have to compete with me? Yuan Shuo cursed. Not to mention Lu Long, even his father, Silver Spear Lu Hao, who was known as one of the 3 spears of the Silver Moon, would have to bow down and call me Master Shuo when he sees me. Li Hao didn't say anything, but he was a bit nosy. Was Lu Long's father also a martial master? It's also known as one of the 3 spears of the Silver Moon, but the Silver Spear doesn't sound too good. Obscene gun. It felt like he was a rapist. Alright. At this moment, Yuan Shuo's eyes suddenly brightened. Since you don't care, isn't it a little embarrassing for me to be shy? Forget it, I'll just absorb it. If worse comes to worst, when I succeed, I'll snatch some good things back for you to make up for it. At this moment, his eyes were so bright that it was terrifying. If I can really recover from my injuries and internal injuries and advance to a Qian warrior. Even if I don't become a Qian warrior master would dare to fight the world. I don't believe that there's no place for Do Qian in this small silver city in just 20 years. At this moment, Yuan Shuo had completely let go. Opportunity, hope, everything was right in front of him. He looked at Li Hao with a solemn expression. Don't worry, if I really suck this sword dry, I'll also find a way to snatch back the weapons of the other 8 great families. As soon as he finished speaking, he no longer hesitated and displayed the 5 birds breathing technique to its extreme. A dense wave of mysterious energy spread out. Get lost. At that moment, an angry shout reverberated. Yuan Shuo shouted coldly, I'll teach my student the secret technique of 5 birds. Whoever dares to come near me, I'll let you see if you can't kill anyone when you're old and have over 100 martial masters. A furious roar, and the surroundings instantly fell silent. The people who were protecting him and monitoring him had disappeared. No one dared to peep at a martial master who had over 100 martial masters imparting secret techniques. Unless the stronger night patrolman came, the weak night patrolman might be killed if they encountered Yuan Shuo. Moreover, it wasn't to the point of falling out yet. At this moment, the world was silent. Although the tiger was old, its might was still there. Although Li Hao didn't see the person in the dark, he was still excited. This was his teacher, the top martial master in the past. Even when his powers were at their peak, he was still able to terrorize everyone. Do Qin. Li Hao murmured in his heart, full of anticipation. Who was stronger, Master Do Qin or the Red Shadow? Teacher. You must successfully advance. This was his greatest trump card, his greatest backer. Chapter 80. Master and disciple both promoted. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 80. Chapter 23. Master and disciple both promoted. In the small courtyard, a storm was brewing. A sick tiger still had 30% of its power. Following Yuan Shuo's rage, the figures in the surroundings disappeared. As for Yuan Shuo, he had also activated his breathing technique. As a top-notch martial master, Yuan Shuo didn't hesitate once he had made his decision. He had to think twice before doing anything. When he had really made up his mind, such an old martial master was astonishingly decisive. The starlight energy surged into his body crazily. Even Li Hao could hear the faint sound of his heartbeat. He was also a little excited. He was unspeakably nervous. What was he afraid of? They were afraid that there wasn't enough starlight. What if his teacher absorbed too little and it was useless? He was afraid that the starlight energy on the jade sword was limited. He was even considering if the jade sword was not enough, would it be possible to add the stone knife? In Li Hao's opinion, it was all worth it to exchange 2 useless weapons for Yuan Shuo's recovery and even his advancement. Otherwise, it would either benefit the Red Shadows or the Night Patrol. This was the worst outcome. As for Li Hao, there was a 99% chance that he wouldn't be able to enjoy the bonus. Just as Yuan Shuo was absorbing the starlight energy. Silver City Ancient Academy. Outside the small courtyard, there was no one within a few hundred meters. In the distance, on the roof of the Ancient Academy's teaching building. At this moment, two figures appeared. It was a man and a woman, their faces somewhat blurry. Hu Hao, what do you think? What's the matter? The woman asked as she looked into the distance. However, she did not look at Yuan Shuo directly. Instead, she looked away. There was a faint surge of qi and blood in that direction, so she did not dare to rashly peek. What do you think? The man was dressed in a black uniform and had a slender figure. His eyes seemed to contain starlight as he replied softly, I don't think so. If Yuan Shuo wants to teach his disciple the secret technique of 5 birds, then so be it. Are you really just going to teach me a secret technique? Such a big commotion. If you want to spread it, you can just go back to your room and do it. Why did you make such a big commotion in the courtyard? The woman said in disbelief. Let's demonstrate. The man laughed. You know the situation. It seems that a mysterious superhuman has his eyes on his student. After all, Yuan Shuo has been a tyrant for his entire life. Now that superpowers have risen, he has been lying low for many years. In the end, even his last disciple has been targeted. The commotion today might be to spread the news to the outside world and hopefully, it can deter the other party. Is that possible? His era is over. The woman sighed. 20 years ago, the era was for martial masters. And now, it was no longer that era. 20 years ago, Yuan Shuo had dominated the world and had surpassed 100 martial masters. He was even the top existence among those who had surpassed 100 and was about to rise to the Do Qian level. Who wouldn't revere such a figure? If it was a few years ago, Yuan Shuo would have had enough power to intimidate them. However, a year ago, a student of the Ancient Academy was killed. This also meant that Yuan Shuo's prestige had completely disappeared. The news of Yuan Shuo's injury must have spread, and even his crippled qi and blood, as well as his damaged heart, might have been leaked. Otherwise, even supers would not dare to mess with a peak martial master who exceeded 100. The fact that the other party had dared to make a move on the Ancient Academy a year ago meant that he was no longer afraid of Yuan Shuo. There seemed to be an eye on the woman's forehead that had not opened. At this moment, she looked into the distance again and felt a little moved. Yuan Shuo was no longer the Yuan Shuo of the past. She was actually very interested in the secret technique of 5 birds. She wanted to open her eyes and see through that layer of qi and blood. Was Yuan Shuo trying to pass down the secret technique or was he doing something else? In the next moment, a layer of starlight flickered on her forehead. Beside her, the man said in a low voice, "Don't act rashly. We're here to protect him, not to provoke." He said. "I'm fine." The woman couldn't suppress her curiosity, and the third eye on her forehead was opening. "Be careful not to get hurt by the blood qi." The man frowned. The woman chuckled but did not say anything. Blood qi injury. A few hundred meters away. Were martial masters. Very powerful. The woman was young and had not been a superhuman for long. She had seen some martial masters of the 10th realm who could not even withstand a single blow. As for the 100 martial masters, he had met one before. However, that person had been to the night patrolman's headquarters and was rather low-key and humble. He was very polite to the night patrolman, even a little humble. The era of martial masters was over. The legend of the past, who had more than 100 martial masters, was nothing more than this now. Moreover, Yuan Shuo was injured. It was just a glance. It wasn't like he was doing anything. The woman didn't listen to his advice. She still chose to open her eyes and said with a smile, Hu Hao, we have the duty and responsibility to observe the situation clearly in case anything happens to Professor Yuan. I'm just carrying out my duty. Who knows if Li Hao is trying to murder Professor Yuan? Wasn't he afraid of being held accountable for finding an excuse? Hu Hao frowned but didn't say anything. As Yuan Shua's hopes of advancing to the next level were dashed, the night patrolman's headquarters did not treat him as respectfully as before. Furthermore, Yuan Shua was indeed old, and the night patrolmen were also working with other top experts in the Palea.Civilization faculty. Yuan Shua's status was actually constantly declining. Be careful. A top-tier martial master is still very scary. I know. The woman interrupted him and opened her third eye completely. At this moment, she saw it. He saw Yuan Shua behind the blood mist. And at this moment, she saw a pair of eyes filled with killing intent, anger, and madness from being despised. It was a pair of eyes that could see through people's hearts and everything in the world. You have guts. Peeking at my secret technique, you're courting death. At this moment, Yuan Shua soared into the sky like a bird.